start where we left off last time, since you all had plenty of questions regarding interviews. I will start sharing my screen. I will share just a few insights for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you all can start dropping in your questions. I remember a few questions from last time which we could not address because of the lack of time. So I will be doing that today. And if there's anything else, please feel free to type it in the chat box and I will address as many questions as I can. So I'll start sharing my screen. Is my presentation visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So before we actually dig into the questions and your queries on what other questions that you might have, the interview FAQs that you would want me to address on how you can answer that, I would like to share a few warm-up exercises which I feel come in really handy. And if you start practicing your questions using these exercises, trust me, you will do so much better in your interviews than you actually would if you just go directly in. So the first one is flex your imagination. Now, here, what I particularly suggest is that you take any random object. For example, I take this notepad and I reimagine this as a chopping board. Now, it's all up to your imagination and start talking about it. So, take the object, reimagine it as something else, and then start talking about it. When you do exercises like these, it will ensure that you are confident, you have fluency, and your creative fluids will come in handy when you're speaking. And that's when you will also be able to think quickly, faster, and in a more structured manner while you're being asked questions during your interview. The second one is talk to yourself. It's very important that you give yourself random topics and start talking to yourself about it. Talk in front of the mirror, record your videos, audios, anything for that matter, whatever works for you. The third one is play both sides, which is a role play exercise. It's very fun. So even if you don't have a partner, even if you don't have anybody to practice with, you can do it yourself. Create a scenario in your head and talk on behalf of both the people. So consider yourself as the interviewer and consider yourself as the interviewee, and then start asking questions and then responding to them. This will again help you get into the zone of the interview and practice well. The last one is choose any random word when you're sitting, when you're idle, and start weaving a story around it. So these things will actually help you think a lot. They will help you use your brain in the right structured manner so that you are well prepared for the interview and you will be able to think, structure, and talk better. Now, I would like to take a moment to for you to look at the slide. Now, there are a lot of questions, especially as freshers, that we don't know answers to, right? And we often get confused or we start talking something random just for the sake of it, right? We start answering something because, we just don't want to disappoint the interviewer. But that's not the right approach. Here are a few examples that I've jotted down for you that can come in handy when you don't know the answer to a certain question. So let's take a situation. If you have some knowledge about it, you could say something like, just explain whatever you know and then add, I have read about it, but I'm not sure if I can recall more information right now. If you don't know anything at all, the most important thing is to not beat around the bush because that really aches and irritates the interviewer. You can just say, sorry, sir or ma'am, I am not sure if I have the adequate knowledge about it. And if you're a fresher, you can say, I am a quick learner and I believe that with the right guidance, I can get it done. Now, if you're interested in the subject matter, but you don't know a specific concept, you can say something like, finance has always intrigued me, but I'm not aware of this concept. However, if I'm given the right guidance, I can learn more about it. So these are just a few insights, a few examples that I wanted to share with you because I know a lot of people face this issue that they get nervous and then they don't know what they're speaking or they just beat around the bush during interviews when you don't know the answer to a certain question. So these are some examples that can come in handy, especially as freshers. So I hope this helps. Now, before we move ahead, there were two major questions which I could not address last time, which were, why is there an employment gap in your resume? And the next question was your strengths and weaknesses. So I will be talking about these questions, which are very frequently asked during all kinds of interviews. And let me know if you have any more questions regarding these two topics. And once I'm done, in the meanwhile, you all can start typing in questions that you want me to help you answer, and we can have a discussion about it. So let's start with the first part, which is how do you answer when you have gaps in your resume? Now, this happens with a lot of people, right? This could happen with you if you took a gap year, if you wanted to pursue MBA, if you changed your career profile app completely and absolutely, right? So we can take breaks for a lot of reasons. It could be health reasons, it could be our interests changing, it could be higher education, right? So a lot of factors influence this. So you don't have to get intimidated by the fact when an interviewer asks you, can you justify the gap in your resume? You just have to be well prepared. So the first thing is, it's very important for you to make sure that you are being honest. If you start lying about your gaps, trust me, when an interviewer starts asking you more about it, it will lead to a spiral of lies, and then your lies will be caught instantly. Okay, so it's always important to be very honest about whatever the reason was. Of course, you don't have to make it sound very unprofessional, unethical, and just say that, I just felt like chilling for a bit, or I just felt like doing nothing for a bit, because of course that shows that you're laid back and you don't have a very positive or growth oriented approach, right? So let's look at a few things, or some relevant examples that can actually come in handy. Now, one could be redundancy. Now, the answers that you're not supposed to give are, I probably could have made more of the position and wish I'd put more in effort in. Now, this usually happens when there are layoffs happening in your company, right? A lot of layoffs have happened in the past few years, and sometimes it's not about you, it's not about your lack of skills, but it's just budget cut, right? So you can't question yourself when an interviewer is asking you that. You have to tell them and make them believe that you are the right fit, and they were just external factors that led to this happening with you. So don't say something like, I could have made more of the position and I would have put in more effort. Instead, say something like, my company was in the process of making cutbacks, and unfortunately I was a newer team member. However, I learned a lot from the role and I'm proud that I made an impact. So the important thing while answering this question specifically in all kinds of example is to give a positive impression, to show that you have a positive impression towards it. You can turn the negative to positive. Instead of doubting yourself, you have to make them prove that it's okay, it happens, I was one of the newer members, however I take this as a learning opportunity, and I learned a lot during that particular position. Now, the second one is education. So if you took up another course and that's the reason for your gap, you won't say things like, I didn't know what else to do, so I thought I'd take another course. That's not the right approach. You will say something like, I felt I had more to learn about my industry. By improving my foundation of knowledge, I believe I'm able to apply for the position myself, right? Now, if you have any personal issues, it could be health issues, your health, your closest family member's health. There could be a lot of problems or genuine reasons that you could not study further or you could not work. And that's why you have a gap here in your resume. So you can't say, I had some personal issues that I can't discuss, because then that's very convenient, right? Everybody can say that and then nobody can question that. So how do you make it sound honest? You can say, okay, there's a mistake here on the PPT. But the point here is that whatever the issue is, you don't have to go deep into the issue. But the right way to approach this would be you saying something like, I was struggling with my health. However, I took that opportunity to take care of myself so that my physical and mental health is in a better position. And I also took up some online courses which helped me know more about the industry, which helped me gain some additional skills. And that's the reason I could not continue further. So even if you had some health issues, right? If it could be related to physical health, you can always mention that, you took up some online courses. But if your health is so bad that it did not allow you to do anything, or you had some responsibilities, just be very honest about it and try to explain them that I was in a very, very tough position because of, certain health issues. And my focus was that I used to constantly read. I made sure that I know what's going on in the industry. I made sure that I upskill myself, or I am aware of whatever's going on. And that's how I believe that I have learned and gained right amount of knowledge during this time that I took off. Now, you also have to show them in some manner or the other that you took this time, took any of the reasons that you have gaps in your resume to upskill yourself, to show how you stayed up to date. You have to make sure that you make them believe that you are aware of the industry patterns, you're aware of the changes that's happening. And for that to happen, now I understand a lot of you might say, but what if I didn't do any additional courses? What if I didn't read? So the point about that is, even if you did not do it prior to that, take the time before your interview to grasp, to learn as much as you can. Even if you did not do any courses, try to read about the industry, about the job position in and out, so that you can make them believe that you are not laid back. You have done enough research and you know why you're here, you know why you want this position, and you have to make them believe that, right? So the important part here is that you have to make them believe in yourself. And that's how you can, with pure honesty, by giving relevant examples, you can justify your gaps in your resumes. Okay, so I will just quickly look at the chat here before I move ahead to strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so somebody has asked me, I'm changing my field from healthcare to business administration HR. So how should I answer the question properly if they ask why am I changing fields? So I partially addressed this issue of change in field last time as well, because I myself am in a position right now where I did switch my fields. I did my master's in international relations, but now I'm working as a corporate slash soft skills trainer, right? So people often ask me, why did you make that switch? Were you not sure? Why did you do international relations? Or if not that, people could ask you that, why do you want to switch your field? And what have you done? What have you done to make sure that you've upskilled yourself to get into this field? Because if you're switching to something like HR, there are a lot of people who are actually studying those courses, right? But then why would they hire you instead of those people? You have to make them believe that. Now, since you all are going to pass out now, I think the best approach that you can take before you actually make any such decisions is, if you think you want to make a switch, if for example, I thought today, I want to make a switch, maybe in the next 6 months or 8 months or a year, you have to start working on building your resume in relation to that skill. Now, while I was doing a corporate job, when I decided that I wanted to become a trainer, I actually worked and did a corporate job before that after my master's. But then at the back of my head, within 6 months, I knew that I wanted to make a switch. I knew what I wanted to do and I wanted to make a switch. So, what are you supposed to do? Try upskilling yourself and doing as much work as you can to justify that in your resume. I did online pro bono sessions. I started doing volunteering related to communication. I started taking sessions, as I said, pro bono, right? I took up 2 certification courses so that I could become a certified soft skills trainer slash corporate trainer. So these are some things, if you're not too late, these are some things that you can keep in mind, that if you want to make a career switch and you're very, very sure about it, you have to find out what you need to do in order to figure that out, what you need to do, what are the skills that you can upskill yourself on, so that you are hired instead of a person who has done a full-fledged degree in HR or in MBA or anything for that matter, right? So the point here is that you have to find out your niche and make sure that you end up standing out in front of the other 100 candidates that they might have. And you have the chance to prove them that you know better. You have worked on it, even though they have done the degree, you have self um, motivated yourself, or you have done some great amount of self study on those topics, which makes you stand out in front of them. So you have to constantly prove by upskilling yourself in your resume on paper, so that once you get a chance to get into the interview after your resume is shortlisted, that's when you get a chance to actually prove yourself that, these are the things that I've mentioned in my resume, and this is my chance to prove that I know better, I have done better, I have explored a lot of other options, and I have done a lot of courses which will help me grow in this field better, and that's why I can stand out. Now, I am not giving very particular examples right here. The only very specific example I could actually give was regarding my field, right? Because that's what I did. So you have to find out, according to your field, according to your career switch or your career choice, what you can do to make sure that you stand out. And that is not very difficult, trust me. You just need to sit with yourself. You need to find your niche. You need to find relevant things that you can do. You need to create lists And in the next 6 to 8 months, work towards that, and I'm sure you will get that job, and there's going to be no hassle for that. Hmm. Okay, somebody has asked me something related to resume building. So that's something I will take up in the next session. So let's just stick to interview skills, and any questions that you have related to the interviews, I would request that. Okay. Okay. So I think all relevant questions is something that I have addressed as of now, whatever I can see in the chat box. So let's move to the other question, which we could not address last time, which was what are your strengths and weaknesses? Now, sorry. Okay. When it comes to your strengths and your weaknesses, it's a very tricky question because you end up saying cliches like, for example, if somebody asks you what your strengths are, you end up saying things like, I am hardworking, I am somebody who can put in a lot of hours. I am somebody who can finish things on deadlines, right? But that's something which has become very cliche over a period of time, and everybody could say that, and nobody could actually prove that until they hire you, right? So, what are some ways in which you can mention your strengths? Now, strengths and weaknesses again something that will differ and it might change from job to job. So, it's very important for you to be prepared beforehand for that. Now, the best formula to mention or to prepare for your strengths before an interview is whatever the job that you're applying for or the job for the interview for which you will be sitting, you have to go through the job description thoroughly. That's the most important part, be it your resume building, be it your interviews. You going through the job description thoroughly is very important, and that's something a lot of us miss doing. Why? Because we just quickly look at the job description and we see ki, okay, this is the position, this is what I want to apply for, this is the salary. I'm sure sabse pehle everybody just looks at the salary, right? That this is what I'm going to earn if they mention. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. But the important part that you all miss out is that you have to go through the job description thoroughly. Now, there are a few pointers written there of roles and responsibilities, of their expectations from you in the job description section. Now, you need to pick keywords from that. There will be a lot of keywords. For example, they will say things like somebody who's good at communication or interpersonal skills so that they can deal with their clients better, right? Now, since I know communication is my strength, I'll quickly pick up that word, interpersonal skills or communication skills, and somehow inculcate that into my answer. Now I know that I'm good at public speaking or communication. I will consider that my strength, right? If you think you're good at project management or some skill like that, you can call that your strength, right? If you think you're good with people, you can say, I have people skills, I have customer skills. Or you could say, I have good interpersonal skills. Or if you think you work better in a team, you can say that team building is a core part of me and I feel like I've done that a lot. Now, how do you prove that? Whatever the skill you choose, just choose one out of any key number of words that you choose from the job description. Just jot them down. Then boil it down to either one or two skills. Once you do that, now try to think of a relevant example where you might have used that skill and how it impacted something. Now, for example, you're in college, right? And you think that public speaking is something that you think is your strength, and it's also important for that job because that's how you read it in the job description. Now what's important for you to do is that you take that skill, okay, and you try to think of a story where you actually used it. You might have participated in a lot of public speaking competitions or anything which required communication, debates, anchoring, anything for that matter, right? So take that skill, take an example of how you actually use that skill in a better way and how you were appreciated about it. So until and unless you give relevant examples about that skill, you cannot substantiate your argument. So the most important part is go through the job description thoroughly, jot down a few skills from that, boil it down to one or two skills, and then form your answer by attaching it to an example or a story and then explaining it to them in 45 seconds to 1 minute on why that's your strength, and then relate it to the fact that this is the strengths that they mentioned in the job description will come in handy in their job. So again, club it all together and try to prove them that since this is a skill that you were also looking for in your job, I feel that I'm the perfect fit for it because of so and so reasons. Now, coming to weaknesses, right? Now, a lot of people, again, there are a lot of cliches involved in weaknesses as well, right? What you have to do is, again, you have to firstly reimagine your weakness as a challenge. Stop calling it a weakness. Even if the person is asking you what are your weaknesses or what is one of your weakness, you constantly, while answering, use the word challenge instead of weakness so that you can prove it to them that I see it as a challenge, and challenges are something that can be overcome, right? But weaknesses are not. Because when you say the word weakness, it immediately gives a very negative connotation, right? So you firstly reframe the word weakness and consider that as a challenge while answering your question. Now you take a skill which you think can be worked upon. Okay. Now, if you think that that's a skill which is very core to the job requirement, you cannot call that your weakness. Now, why is that? For example, I'm applying for the job of a trainer, right? And if I end up saying I am weak at communication, it's gone. It's so core to my job. If I have to be a trainer, I have to have good communication skills, right? So I cannot call that my weakness. You have to mention your weaknesses, which you think might be needed in that job, might not be needed in that job, and it's something that you can work upon. Now, one example for it could be, for example, there's some designing also involved in your job, and you say that I am good with a few tools. You just name a few designing tools. And maybe you can say something like, I just feel like I haven't had enough practice or hands-on on Canva or Adobe. And I feel like that's something that I will still need some practice to work on. Now, if you think that these are two tools that they don't use very frequently, the ones that they use, you're good with that. But if these are some tools that they might use from time to time and you're not really, it's not very core to the job requirement, you can use that. So look at the job description. Again, we come back to the job description like we did for strengths. Look at the job description, jot down all the skills that they want. If you think one of those skills is not very important, honestly, if they've mentioned it there, it might be important. So try not to take a weakness from those list of skills given out there. So try to think of other skills that might be required in this job. Talk to a few people, try networking, try reaching out to people who are currently doing that kind of a job or are in the industry, and try to figure out what are some skills that are not very core to this job requirement, and then frame your answers according to that. So that's how you frame a very smart answer on what are your weaknesses, by mentioning something that you think can be worked upon and it would not hamper your growth or the company's growth, or it would not make them change their mind on hiring you at all. Okay. Can I have some more questions here? Okay. Okay, so let's just take one of the star method questions that we dealt with last time. And again, I'll just quickly, briefly tell you what the star method is for those of you who could not attend the last session. Just give me one moment. Okay. So, star method. Star method is basically something that is used for you to address behavioral or situation-based questions. Now, what are these questions? We discussed a few over here the last time. These questions could be something like, how do you handle pressure? Tell me about a time when you made a mistake. Tell me about an achievement you're proud of. So these are some questions which actually come under the category of how you can deal them with star method. Now, there are a lot of questions that come under this category, right? And you cannot possibly predict that when you go in for the interview, what are some questions that people might ask you relating to the star method, right? but you understand that there are a few set of questions that when there's a situation based question, you can tackle it through star method. So the important part here is you make a list of about 8 to 10 questions which you think can be tackled with star method, and trust me, most likely the chances are that you will be asked one of those questions as itself. But if not, and if you take those 10 questions, you need to start practicing that, and you need to start thinking and structuring your thoughts and your mindset in a manner so that even if the question is not the same like the one you prepared, you are able to think logically and creatively. So, firstly, it's very important to have it in your head that what STAR is. It refers to situation, task, action, and result. So, have a few stories prepared which you think can be used over there. Now, the example that we took is what has been your greatest personal achievement? Think of a situation like I had to deliver a speech, but I did not have good spoken skills. The task you did for it. I knew that in order to ace it, I had to practice. So you practiced. Now, what is the action you took? I started practicing my speech every day in front of the mirror and in front of my friends. And the result was that you were able to deliver a great speech. So you have to think of stories in advance while practicing so that you can answer this question in the star method. Think of a situation, think of the task you had to do, think of the actions you took and the results it led to. Okay. Okay, I'll just look at the chat once again. Okay. Mm. Okay, so there's one question which is very pertinent, which is about your salary expectations. Now, this is a very important question, especially as freshers, because you don't know what to quote, right? Even though in some of the job descriptions, especially during campus placements, what happens is that they usually give a bracket of the job that they're going to offer you, right? But there are a few tips that you can use. The first one, I like to call it the reverse Uno method. Okay. Now, if the recruiter is asking you, what are your salary expectations, turn it around to them. You could say something like, I couldn't see a salary range listed in the job description. Is it possible that you can share the salary band with me? So, what you did is you very smartly told them that you did not give me a band. So, is it a possibility that you can give me a band of how much salary you can offer? They could say something like, 6 to 8, 8 to 10, at least you will have an idea about what they're ready to offer and if it suits you or not. So that's the reverse Uno method, that you turn it around on them. Or you could say something like, I am flexible with the salary range, but I would like to be fairly compensated for the role and I'm open to discussion specific numbers once I've learned about the details of the position. So you tell them that once you tell me the roles and responsibilities properly, I'm open to discussion and all I want is a fair compensation, and that's all I am focusing on right now. Now, once the recruiter has shared some numbers with you, given you a rough idea of the salary band, you have to do your research. That's very important. That's something that you miss, right? So you have to go through websites like Glassdoor. You will see a lot of salary ranges mentioned for a lot of job positions in Glassdoor. In fact, even if you want to read about the company's working ethics, or how the company's what are the feedbacks of some of the employees, you can actually read a lot of that on the internet. There are a lot of websites for that. So the important part here is that once they've shared the numbers with you, and if you have a fair idea of what you read on Glassdoor or on the internet from some legible sources, you can say something like, considering the industry standards, the company's compensation practices, and the skill set that I have, I think a salary range between 10 lakh to 12 lakh would be fair. My background includes a specialized degree and a proven track record in success in similar roles. So you have to have a blend of both things. You end up telling them that you know what the industry standards are, you know what they would generally offer to people, or if they not, for that position, what is the generally the salary band that a lot of companies do offer, right? So you tell them that that's what I feel would be a fair compensation, somewhere between 10 to 12 lakhs. That's what I think would be a great salary option. And then you substantiate your argument by adding something like, my background includes a specialized degree and a proven track record. So you're trying to tell them that you have the right skill set, experience, if not experience, the right qualifications, and you think that you deserve that much. Now, if um if there's a situation, let's say, where, despite you trying the reverse Uno method, they're not really telling you what the salary band or expectations that they offer. They would not tell you sometimes, right? So in that situation, you can say something like, I'd be happy to share my salary expectations, but first, could you tell me more about the company's benefits package and growth opportunities, right? So you want to know about what other benefits are they offering. Are they offering some health insurance? Are they offering some coupons from time to time, right? So once you're aware of everything that they are providing you in the package, the benefits package, then you can still reconsider, right? Even if your salary expectation in your head is 10 to 12 LPA and they are offering you somewhere around 8, if you know that the benefits are good, you might want to settle for 8, right? So you ask them relevant questions, and that's how you make a decision for yourself, right? So these are a few things that can come in handy when you're asked about your salary expectations. However, it's very important to understand that if a company has a specific salary range mentioned in the job description, which is non-negotiable, and for once you even try to negotiate, but you realize it's non-negotiable, you cannot push further. Especially as freshers, we cannot push further a lot if the company is very stringent on that's how, or that's the only amount they're going to provide, right? So you will have to settle for that, or you can just reject that. So in some cases, it doesn't work, but for other cases, there are a few examples. These were the few examples that I shared that could probably work for you. Okay. Um, mm, what if I let you? Okay. So somebody has asked me, what if I'm into HR, but still I'm not so good at public speaking? How should I frame it so that it doesn't look bad and I can explain them that I may speak less, but I can be useful to for the organization? Now, you have to understand that if you're applying for the position of an HR, you have to have good communication skills, right? Because the HRs, it's their core job responsibility. Like we talked of strengths and weaknesses, right? You cannot mention a weakness that's core to the job requirement. Now, you might have good communication skills, but you speak less, and that's totally fine as long as you're doing your job properly. So, in that case, you can tell them that I generally do not speak a lot, but I do it when it's relevant. You can tell them in a very structured and a positive manner, but that is something that you should actually keep redundant, or you should keep it short. Instead, how you can turn this around is you focus on the other qualities that an HR is required to have. So once you show them or you try to prove them that the qualities that are actually required, for example, if there are 10 skills required and you just have a problem with one, right? So try to focus and imbibe in their head that, but the rest 9 qualities that I have is something that I'm so great at that nobody else can stop me from getting this job position, and that's something they will lose out on. You have to sell yourself. If there are 10 skills and you do not have one of them, that's totally fine because you have 9 others, right? So it's about how you structure, how you try to imbibe it in their head, how you can make a positive difference, even if you do not have one or two skills, because that's totally fine. Everybody cannot possess all kinds of skills at all times. Okay. Okay, so if they, what should we answer if they provide pay band in job description? So as I said, when they have mentioned the pay band in job description, it's usually non-negotiable. And the chances are that they would not ask you what your expectations are, because they know that you have gone through the job description and it's clearly mentioned. And that's when you can just for once try and ask them that if the salary band that they've mentioned is negotiable, because you possess so and so skills and according to industry standards you think that you deserve a pay which is a little more than that. But if they do not agree to it, that means they have made it very clear that whatever was mentioned in the job description was extremely non-negotiable. So then you really can't do anything about it. Okay. Okay, I have been awarded monthly and quarterly champion awards in my past organization. One of them is the Best Teamwork Award. I have indeed mentioned on my CV. My question is it good to share my past experiences and achievements with examples during interview, or how to present them? That's actually a great point that you can actually add that. Now, if you're asked a question like, what has been your greatest achievement, right? This is the perfect example for that. Use the star method. You're asking, right? If you can share your past experiences, please go ahead. Use the star method. Tell them that, there was a lot of work pressure or there was something that you worked upon, and, just describe the situation. Then tell what all you did or what all planning or charting you did out, in order to make sure that you can do it in a better way. Then mention the action items you took to prove that you actually put in a lot of effort, more effort than others. And that's why the end result was that you actually got an award for that, right? So use the star method. You can actually use this situation, the whole situation that you've mentioned, in a lot of questions that might be tackled with star method. Okay. How can we answer if we are applying for higher designation? Can you please elaborate a little? I'm not sure I understand what exactly are you trying to ask. How does LinkedIn help us in our careers? Okay. So one extremely important point that I would like to make here is that we will discuss the resume building session the next time. But these days, what actually works in the market are very plain resumes. Now, when I say very plain resumes, it means that it's preferred that you do not add a picture to your resume, especially in the Indian market and in a lot of um, American or Indian countries. Now, this might work for some people if you're in the European countries, because I remember once I was training with the United Nations, and they told us that according to them, adding a picture to your resume is extremely important, right? So every country, every region, every organization and job position can have different requirements. But these days, since a lot of company have been using ATS, which is the applicant tracking system, to scan your resumes, it cannot scan visuals or graphics, and that's why it's told that you should avoid adding pictures to your resume, right? Now, why I made this point, and I will get deep into this the next time, but why I made this point was, why is LinkedIn important? Now, you have mentioned everything about yourself that you could in your resume, but there's a restriction, right? An ideal resume, especially for a fresher, should be about 1 page. And if you have a lot of experience, it could spill over to 2 pages, right? Now, you have to make sure that your resume is extremely crisp, but there's no limit to LinkedIn. Now, one another important aspect of your resume is that you have to add a hyperlink to your LinkedIn account on your resume. Why is that? So that the recruiter can know more about you when they visit your LinkedIn page. It should be extremely up to date. It should have your picture. It should be completely updated until your last position that you worked on, or the highest qualification you have, any research papers that you were able to publish, any extracurriculars that you've done, any volunteering that you've done. So if there's a restriction of things that you cannot mention in your resume, it's important to do that on LinkedIn so that they can go from your resume to your LinkedIn profile and know and understand more about you. They can see if there are some recommendations from people who have given you. They can know so much more about you, right? About you, about your career profile, about your life. So that's why LinkedIn becomes a very integral part of today's day and age. And when it comes to just careers in general, there's a great opportunity of you being able to find jobs on LinkedIn, on being able to network with people, to understand, to give your opinions on a lot of posts that people do put. So LinkedIn has become a very integral and a non-negotiably very important part of your career life. Can I tell you my weaknesses and strengths in my interview? Again, not very clear. Can you just rephrase this question, please? Manager. Um, okay. So for that question, which said, what if I want to apply for a higher position or a higher designation? For example, I am an engineer and applying for a post of a manager. Now, firstly, you have to figure out why you deserve that position. I'm sure you have worked as an engineer for quite a few years to think that you deserve that position of a manager. Now, what are the qualities that you think your organization requires a manager to have? It probably could be something like leadership, teamwork, making sure that you're taking everybody's opinions together, being humble, right? And a lot of other hard skills or managerial skills that might be required. Now, you could do a lot of things for that. If you think there are some specific courses which will give you an upper hand, start doing that simultaneously while you're working as an engineer. Secondly, if you think you have enough experience to become a manager, then you're really good to go. You just have to prove it to the recruiters in the interview that you have relevant experience, you have relevant skills, give them a few examples and give them some substantial material on how you have used these skills in the past few years and you think that you can handle a team and become a manager. So again, it completely depends on your job position, your experience, your past. You have to sit down, figure out what works for you and try to again sell yourself, as I keep saying that. As a fresher, what is my strength and weakness? Again, I told you, right? I just addressed the question of strengths and weaknesses. You have to figure that out. If you think you have participated in a lot of extracurriculars, or you think you have strong research skills, because some people might be interested in writing, some might be interested in speaking. Now, you don't have to figure out that just in general about yourself. Whenever there's a company coming in, whenever you're applying for a job position, the important part over here is you go through the job description, find out what strengths do they need, then sit down, think which is the strength that you possess, what is the one strength that you think you have, and think of relevant examples on why you have that strength, what you did to, build onto that skill or to that strength, and then answer accordingly. Again, what can you tell about your weaknesses and strengths in the interview? Like I just mentioned, just avoid cliches. Try it again. I will just boil it down to one point. You have to read the job description thoroughly. Look at what skills they're looking for, what strengths they're looking for. If it's public speaking, interpersonal skills, client relationship, sales, whatever the field is, try to pick the minutest words possible and try to use that and show them that that's your strength because that's something you have worked upon in the past, and substantiate your argument with relevant examples. Most importantly, I want to know what should I answer the question about my introduction as a fresher. So again, we discussed this the last time, but I'll briefly touch upon it today as well. When there's a question, the most basic question that everybody asks, tell me something about yourself. Now, that sounds like such a simple question, yet most of us struggle while answering that in an interview. Why? Because we cannot figure out what we are supposed to say. We think that everything's mentioned in my resume. What am I supposed to say here? And then we end up reiterating whatever's there on your resume. The important part here is that that's a hidden question. When they say, tell me something about yourself, they're trying to ask you a brief on the complete picture on who you are as a person and what are your career goals. So you should always start by introducing yourself in just a line or two because they know about you, the basic information about you through your resume. Then again, if you have read the job description thoroughly, you would know what strengths they want and what exactly are they looking for. Try to weave a small story in which you are directly or indirectly mentioning the strengths that you have. You can say something like, I've always been really good with people, and I feel like sales is the perfect job for me because I have always had people skills, and I have also done some certifications on soft skills. So I believe that I possess all those skills, and it has always been a dream to get into the sales industry. And in the past 2 3 years, I have worked upon these skill sets, and these are some examples where I actually participated in some extracurriculars to make sure that I have strengthened my pre-existing skills already. And I also feel that since I am really interested in this job position, these are a few goals that I want to achieve in the next few years. Now, what you did here is you told what your strengths are in relation to the job description that they were looking for in the candidate. You also briefly gave them a sneak peek into what you want to do further. So it just shows that you're interested, you're intrigued, you're passionate, and you have a future plan. So once you weave a very small story around all of that, that's how you actually end up answering a question like, tell me something about yourself. It does not only restrict to you saying, my name is Hanspreet, I am currently working in this position, and I did my master's in this position. That's something they already have on paper on your resume. What they want is for them, so that you can actually prove it to them that you're really interested in this position, you are very passionate about what you do, you're a very dedicated person that they can hire, and you are somebody who has a vision and has a future plan. Because if you're flummoxed, or if you're confused and you cannot even talk about yourself and weave a story about it, it shows that you're not even sure why you're sitting here. You're probably just sitting here because you want a job, and there's nothing beyond that. Okay, I'm just going through the questions real quick. So somebody asked, can you elaborate on how to prepare for an interview in the European job market when you have an MBA from India? This is something I will discuss in the next session and the upcoming session. So please just be patient until then. How can we tell the gap between graduation and post-graduation? Again, the slide that I actually showed works for this as well. Now, why was there a gap? Usually, when people take a gap between their graduation and their post graduation, it's usually due to preparing for some competitive exams, having some health or personal issues. That's all, right? Because redundancy doesn't really work here. So, again, it's important on what you actually did during that duration and how you can prove it to them. If you did some online courses, mention that. And how you mention that, if you're doing if you're preparing for some competitive exams, again, you have to be very honest about it that I was preparing for some competitive exams. However, in this duration, I figured out my strengths, and I was actually able to sit down, think in a fresh perspective, and figure out what I really want to do. So now I've decided this is the right path for me, and that's why I want to go ahead with it. If you genuinely didn't know what to do a master's degree in, just again focus on the skills that you have built during that period. Tell them, I took some time off to figure out and understand what my strengths are and what I really want to pursue further. In this while, I actually took up some courses to understand if it interests me or not, and if it's the right career path for me or not. And that's why I wanted to take some time, make the right decision, and then go for my master's. Okay, a really good question. Post interview, should I send a follow up mail? How long should I wait for a response from the interviewer? Again, it's a really good practice to send a follow up mail after the interview. Firstly, it's important to thank the interviewer then and there. Then, if they did not get back to you, so just try to figure out first during the interview that what's the usual time period they take to get back. If they say 2 days, wait for 2 days. Once the 48-hour period is over, send them a very nice, kind mail that, hi, sir or ma'am. It was really nice catching up with you, or, it was really nice having an interview 2 days back. I just wanted to follow up and ask, when can I know if I made the position or not? And, when can I get a response back about it? Once you do that, you will most likely get a response. If you don't, again, take 2 to 3 days and again send a follow up that, hi, sir or ma'am, I am just following up once again. I just wanted to get a clarity and understanding on what is it that you have decided? And I just wanted to follow up and confirm that. And thank you so much for your patience, for your time. Just write a very simple, humble mail, but following up firstly after 2 days, then after a few more days, and then probably weekly or two weekly is important. Again, of course, you cannot just keep following up, and I'm sure they would respond after a point. But if they're not responding, and if it's been quite a few weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then I think then it's pretty clear that you did not make it through. So then that's okay. You can just start applying for other jobs. Okay. So let's do a mock interview. I would want some volunteers, and we can just shortlist it to one volunteer. And I would request the Amity staff to please bring that person in, give them the rights so that they can come in and we can have a mock interview with them. I'm not going to tell the question right now. Once you're here, that's when, we will decide on what question I'm going to ask them. So can we have some volunteers? You can probably write it in the chat box if you would want to volunteer for a mock interview. If time allows, we can also have 2 mock interviews. So slide 1. Is this the one you're talking about? Push. Okay. Did I miss your question? Let me just quickly check. Okay, before I make a quick check, 29th June is the deadline for you completing your acing interview quiz in your portal. So complete that as soon as possible, as this is a part of your major project. Make sure you don't miss it. 29th June is your deadline. Okay, there was somebody wrote, if time allows in chat, or if time allows, please take my question. Can you please type in your question again? I think it's lost somewhere. I can't find it. But in the meanwhile, I found another question. Hmm.
Spreet, we have two volunteers here, Janvi and Azaz. They have written their name in the chat box.
Okay. So I think Izaz
I'll
did
promote
volunteer.
Janvi. Izaz has already
Yes,
volunteered last
yes.
time, so I'm
I
giving
think you
chance
can
to
bring in
Janvi.
Janvi this time.
Janvi will be able to talk in a while.
Okay, sure.
Janvi, you have declined the request to be promoted as panelist. So, okay, you cannot join, then it's fine.
Okay, I'll just address one question real quick. I just saw that. How to explain a notice period of 3 months in an interview when a job description it's not mentioned by them and they expect immediate joining? I don't think this is a very major issue. Actually, I was in the same position. I quit my job and there was a notice period of 3 months while the other organization wanted me to join immediately. And they actually thought that it was pretty redundant that, I have a job that I have a notice period of 3 months. But most big corporate firms do have a notice period of 3 months. So if you can find some documents, especially when you get the offer letter or the joining letter, it's usually mentioned that your notice period is 3 months. So you have to find some relevant source in which through which you can show it to them that it is 3 months and that there's nothing that you can do about it. Because I'm sure it is mentioned in some or the other official document. You just have to find it.
Okay, Izaz is here. Izaz, would you like to go for the mock interview? Because I think Janvi has some other commitment. She would not be able to join in.
Sure, Neha ma'am. If Hanspreet ma'am is okay,
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
I
definitely.
know I did it last time, right?
No, no, that's absolutely okay. It's
you
good
were
that you're
actually
actually
very
showing
good.
interest. Yeah, it's
Right.
really good that you are. I just thought we could give some other people some opportunity, but if nobody's up for it, then it's great. You are actually at advantage in comparison to others because you're doing it, in a
Uh-huh.
very practical manner. So,
I
okay.
agree.
Uh,
Thank
do
you
you
so much.
remember, do you remember the question I asked you last time?
Last time you asked, give me some real life situation and how do
You
you handle
Right.
pressure or yeah, that's I remember. Yeah, very well.
Okay. So, let's see. I discussed a few questions today. So let's go around that as well. And I would like to ask you,
Hmm.
okay, did you actually have any employment gaps in your resume?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Hanspreet ma'am, I do have employment gap, and thank you for asking me that question. I have 3 years of employment gap because I was admitted to Amity University to gain more skills and develop myself so that I can do my job better in the future. And Amity University really helped the teachers and the staff to attain that knowledge and the expertise which I've learned. Now I'm looking forward to use those skills which I've achieved at the university level to this job, which I'm sure will bring benefit and growth to this organization as a whole as well as personally.
Okay. That was actually a great attempt. So thank you so much, Azaz, for volunteering.
Sure.
It was good. And I'm sure if you have time to prepare and if you just sit with yourself, go through all the skills that you could add during that point or during that time, you will be able to answer in a better and structured manner.
Sure.
But this was impromptu, great effort, and this was really great. So
Okay,
thank
okay.
you so much.
So, Hansip, I've got a question. You want me to go telling all the strengths and weaknesses and everything right away, or because I do it all phase by phase?
Right.
So, whenever I give interview, so I wait for the question to be answered so that it doesn't become monotonous. And
Absolutely.
one way I'm just speaking, right, and giving all the history, so it
Hmm.
becomes boring for the interviewer as
Right,
well.
right.
So
So
sorry, go
again,
on.
yeah, yeah. So when they ask you about your strengths, your weaknesses, that's when you give an elaborate answer. But
Hmm.
when I tell you to tell or to, focus on your strengths, when they ask you, tell me something about yourself,
Hmm.
I want you to weave a small story. You have to start by telling about yourself. You just have to pick strengths. At this stage, you will not pick up weaknesses. You pick
Correct.
up one strength, you pick up the achievements or, situations around that through which you were able to use that strength in a positive manner and how that strength will actually help you gain some really good experience in this company as well. Now, I'm not telling you to answer what are your strengths in tell me something about yourself, but it's about
Hmm.
weaving a small story where you have a blend of your achievements, a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your short term goals, and a little bit about your long term goals. So it's going
Okay.
to be a blend of everything, probably just one liner on all, and the answer has to be about 30 to 45 seconds or maximum 1 minute. So that way it doesn't become monotonous. If you keep it very short
Great.
and crisp, that's what you can do when you prepare in advance. And that's why I believe that interview FAQs, especially the ones I've listed down here, are so common that you can actually prepare them in advance. And then you will actually have a fair idea when you practice well that you have to keep it short, you have to keep it crisp, you will have pointers in your head that these are the pointers that I have to mention. So it's all about your preparation and how you present yourself over there.
Sure.
That
Thank you
answer.
so much for the feedback. Thank you.
Uh,
Okay. So
Hanspreet, we have two volunteers. If time allows, can we allow them?
I think we have one more session on this, I think in the coming weeks,
Right, right.
right? So maybe we can take one volunteer right now and we can do the other one the next time, or we can take up both the next time, whatever you suggest.
It's okay. We can take them in the next session because it's
Okay,
already
sure. So
four
the next
for
session is on resume building. But what I
sure.
do is I'll use the first 5 minutes, probably 2 minutes per person, and we can take up questions for these volunteers. Does that work?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just address them. So we have like one is Kanav and one
Kanav?
is Felicia. So we'll take them in the next webinar. We can have
Sure.
their mock interviews. So
Sure. So Kanav and Felicia, just remind, honestly, I'm going to remember. But if I don't, just remind me that the next session before we start resume building, the first 5 minutes, we will take up questions with you and we will have your mock interviews. Thank you so much. Okay, there's one more question on how most of the recruiters expect to customize resume for each job application. How many versions of my resume I should maintain? Again, this is about resume building. I would really want you to hold on this question, paste it the next time we have the resume building discussion, and I will address it for sure. It's a very nice and relevant question, but let's keep it for next time since we'll discuss resume building in detail.
So thank you, Hanspreet, for the fruitful and delightful session. We're looking forward for our next session.